The barracks smelled of sweat and gun oil. But to Elliot, it was the stench of betrayal that burned his lungs. He stood frozen in the armory, his fiancée Noah's dog tags dangling from his hand, each engraved letter a silent accusation. Last night, he'd seen Noah slip into Captain Rivera's quarters, their laughter echoing like a blade through his heart. Elliot's fingers tightened around the tags, his knuckles whitening. They'd been together for 3 years of stolen kisses behind the mess hall, whispered promises under starlit Virginia skies, and plans for a life beyond the military. Noah had sworn they'd build a home together, a sanctuary from the world's judgment. But now, as dawn broke over Fort Harlan, Elliot realized that home was a lie. He shoved the tags into his pocket and grabbed his rifle, the weight grounding him. The base was alive with the hum of morning drills. Soldiers jogging in formation, their boots pounding the earth. Elliot's unit, the 47th Recon, was gearing up for a high-stakes training mission in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He couldn't afford to falter, not when Captain Maya Rivera, Noah's new alpha, was watching. Maya was everything Noah admired: bold, commanding, untouchable. Her reputation as a tactical genius preceded her. But to Elliot, she was a thief. He'd seen the way Noah looked at her, the way his eyes lingered on her sharp jawline and steady hands. It wasn't just admiration, it was hunger. And Maya, she didn't push him away. "Elliot, move it," barked Sergeant Callahan, snapping him back to reality. Elliot slung his rifle over his shoulder and joined the formation, his heart a war drum. Noah was there, standing tall at the front, his broad shoulders squared like he owned the world. Elliot wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the mission came first. Always. The briefing was held in a concrete bunker, the air thick with tension. Maya stood at the head of the room, her voice crisp as she outlined the exercise, a simulated ambush in rugged terrain, testing their unit's cohesion under pressure. "We're not just soldiers," she said, her dark eyes scanning the room. "We're a family. Trust is our weapon." Her gaze lingered on Noah, and Elliot's stomach churned. He caught Noah's eye, searching for guilt, for anything. But Noah just flashed that infuriating grin, the one that used to make Elliot's knees weak. Now it felt like a taunt. "You good, El?" Noah asked, his voice low as they geared up. "Don't call me that," Elliot snapped, brushing past him. He didn't trust himself to say more, not yet. The battlefield would be his reckoning. The unit loaded into Humvees, the convoy rumbling toward the mountains. Elliot sat in the back, his mind racing. He'd joined the army to prove himself, to carve out a place in a world that often rejected people like him. Being gay in the military wasn't easy, even in 2025, when "don't ask, don't tell" was long gone. He and Noah had navigated that minefield together, their love a quiet rebellion. But Noah's betrayal shattered that bond, and Elliot wasn't sure what hurt more, losing his fiancée or losing the man he thought Noah was. The terrain grew rougher as they climbed, the air sharp with pine and frost. Maya's voice crackled through the radio, assigning positions. "Elliot, you're on point with Noah. Keep your eyes sharp." Her tone was professional, but it felt like a test. Did she know about them? Did she care? They dismounted, fanning out into the forest. Elliot moved silently, his training kicking in despite the chaos in his chest. Noah was at his side, his presence both familiar and foreign. "We need to talk," Noah whispered, his breath warm against Elliot's ear. "Not now," Elliot hissed, his grip tightening on his rifle. He scanned the trees, hyper-aware of every rustle, every shadow. The exercise was live fire, with blanks, but the stakes felt real. Maybe that's what he needed to fight to drown out the pain. The first ambush hit hard. Simulated explosions rocked the ground, smoke curling through the trees. Elliot dropped to a crouch, signaling Noah to cover the flank. They moved in sync, years of training binding them even now. But when Noah's hand brushed Elliot's arm, it felt like a spark in a powder keg. "Stop it," Elliot growled, pulling away. "You don't get to touch me anymore." Noah's face fell, but before he could respond, Maya's voice cut through the comms. "Hostiles at 3 o'clock. Move." The unit surged forward, and Elliot threw himself into the fight, his anger fueling every step. He didn't care about the exercise anymore. This was his battlefield, and he'd prove he was stronger than Noah's betrayal. As they cleared the first wave, Elliot spotted Maya directing the unit with precision. She was undeniable, a force of nature. But he saw the way Noah gravitated toward her, always a step too close. It was subtle, but to Elliot, it screamed louder than any explosion. By the time they reached the rally point, Elliot's chest was tight with rage and grief. He cornered Noah behind a boulder, away from the others. "Why?" he demanded, his voice low but shaking. "Why her?" Noah's eyes widened, caught off guard. It's not what you think. Don't lie to me." Elliot's voice cracked, and he hated himself for it. "I saw you. I heard you." Noah reached for him, but Elliot stepped back. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Noah said, his voice raw. "It just happened. It just happened." The words hit like shrapnel, tearing through Elliot's defenses. He wanted to scream, to fight, to cry. But before he could respond, Maya's shout echoed through the trees. "Incoming. Take cover." The second wave hit, and Elliot threw himself into the chaos, his heart a battlefield of its own. He didn't know how to fight for Noah anymore if he even wanted to. But one thing was clear, he wasn't going down without a fight. The forest was a blur of smoke and shadows, the crack of blanks mimicking live fire. Elliot's pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out Noah's excuses. He didn't want words, she wanted action, something to anchor him in this storm of betrayal. Maya's commands cut through the haze, sharp and unyielding. "Elliot. Noah. Flank left. Hold the ridge." Her voice was a lifeline, pulling him back to the mission. He moved, his boots crunching against the frost-covered ground, Noah at his side like a ghost of their past. They reached the ridge, crouching behind a fallen log. The enemy simulated by another unit advanced through the trees, their silhouettes barely visible in the dawn light. Elliot's training took over. He signaled Noah to cover the approach, his movements precise despite the ache in his chest. They'd always been a perfect team, reading each other's cues without words. But now, every glance at Noah felt like a wound reopening. He forced himself to focus, scanning for threats. The exercise was a test of trust, and irony wasn't lost on him. I swear, it wasn't planned," Noah whispered, his voice urgent as he reloaded his weapon. "Maya and IIT was one night. A mistake. A mistake." Elliot's voice was low, venomous. "You don't accidentally betray someone you love." He turned away, his eyes locked on the tree line. He couldn't look at Noah, not when his heart was screaming to both forgive and destroy him. Before Noah could respond, a burst of enemy fire erupted, blanks popping like firecrackers. Elliot dove for cover, his body reacting faster than his mind. Noah followed, their shoulders brushing as they huddled behind the log. The contact sent a jolt through Elliot, a cruel reminder of what they'd lost. "Stay focused," Elliot snapped, more to himself than Noah. He peered over the log, spotting movement. The enemy team was good. They were closing in, and Elliot's unit was spread thin. Maya's voice crackled through the comms again, ordering a counterattack. Elliot didn't hesitate. He surged forward, using the terrain for cover, Noah trailing behind. The fight was brutal, even with blanks. Elliot's muscles burned as he navigated the rocky slope, his mind a battlefield of strategy and emotion. He could feel Noah's presence, steady but unwanted, like a shadow he couldn't shake. They cleared the ridge, neutralizing the enemy with precision, but victory felt hollow. Every move reminded Elliot of what they'd been: partners, lovers, a unit. Now, they were fractured. As the skirmish ended, the unit regrouped at a clearing. Maya was there, her face flushed from the fight, her eyes scanning her team. "Good work," she said, her gaze lingering on Noah for a fraction too long. Elliot's jaw clenched. He wanted to confront her, to demand why she'd crossed that line with Noah. But he wasn't ready, not yet. Instead, he busied himself checking his gear, avoiding Noah's attempts to catch his eye. The unit was given a brief rest before the next phase, and soldiers scattered to hydrate and regroup. Elliot found a quiet spot by a stream, the water's rush a fleeting distraction from his thoughts. He pulled Noah's dog tags from his pocket, staring at the engraved name, Noah J. Carter. He'd once traced those letters with pride, dreaming of a future where they'd share a last name. Now, they were a reminder of everything broken. Footsteps crunched behind him. He didn't need to turn to know it was Noah. "Elliot, please," Noah said, his voice softer now, almost desperate. "I messed up. I know I did. But I love you." Elliot's laugh was bitter, echoing over the stream. "Love? You don't even know what that means anymore." He turned, meeting Noah's eyes. They were wide, pleading, but Elliot saw the guilt there, too. "You chose her. You chose Maya." "It wasn't about choosing," Noah said, stepping closer. "It was a moment. A stupid, drunk moment. I didn't think. That's the problem." Elliot cut him off. "You didn't think about me. About us." He shoved the dog tags into Noah's chest, forcing him to take them. "Keep these. I don't want them anymore." Noah's face crumpled, but before he could speak, Maya's voice rang out. "Elliot. Noah. Gear up. We're moving." The urgency in her tone snapped them back to the mission. Elliot turned away, his heart heavy, but his resolve hardening. He wasn't just fighting for the exercise, now was fighting for himself. The next phase was a night op, a simulated rescue mission deep in the mountains. The unit moved under cover of darkness, their NVGs casting the world in eerie green. Elliot took point, his senses heightened. The terrain was treacherous, all jagged rocks and hidden roots, but it suited his mood, unforgiving, raw. Noah stayed close, too close, his presence a constant reminder of their unraveling. Maya led with precision, her commands steady even as the enemy laid traps. Elliot admired her skill, hated himself for it. She was good. It made Noah's betrayal sting more, knowing he'd been drawn to someone so formidable. But Elliot wasn't weak. He'd prove it, not just to Noah or Maya, but to himself. An explosion rocked the ground, a flashbang signaling an ambush. Elliot dropped, rolling behind a boulder, his rifle ready. Noah was beside him, their breaths sinking despite everything. "We've got this," Noah said, his voice steady, like they were still a team. Elliot didn't respond. He couldn't. Instead, he focused on the fight, moving with lethal precision. They cleared the ambush, but the tension between them lingered, heavier than the smoke. As the unit regrouped, Elliot caught Maya watching them, her expression unreadable. Did she know? Did she care? By the time they reached the extraction point, dawn was breaking again, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Elliot's body ached, but his heart hurt worse. He'd survived the mission, but the real battle was just beginning. Noah's betrayal was a wound that wouldn't close, and Maya's role in it was a question he couldn't ignore. He'd fight, though not with fists, but with truth. On this battlefield of love, he'd take them both down. The extraction point was a clearing ringed by pines, the air sharp with the scent of sap and gunpowder residue. Elliot's muscles screamed from the night op, but his mind was sharper, honed by anger and purpose. He stood apart from the unit, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the Blue Ridge Mountains loomed like silent judges. Noah approached, tentative, his dog tags glinting in the early light. "Elliot, we can't keep doing this," he said, his voice low, almost drowned by the chatter of the unit packing up. "You're shutting me out." Elliot's gaze didn't waver. "You shut me out first," he said, his words clipped. "When you chose her." He didn't need to say Maya's name. I'd hung between them like a live grenade. Noah ran a hand through his cropped hair, frustration etching his features. "I told you. It was a mistake. I'm trying to fix it." "Some things can't be fixed," Elliot said, turning to face him. Noah's eyes were raw, pleading, but Elliot's heart was a fortress now, walls built from pain. "You broke us, Noah. You don't get to decide when I forgive you." Before Noah could respond, Maya's voice cut through the clearing. "Unit, form up. Debrief in 10. She stood at the center, her presence commanding, her dark hair pulled back tightly. Elliot watched her, searching for a crack in her armor. Did she know the chaos she'd caused? Or was she just another soldier caught in Noah's orbit? The debrief was held in a mobile command tent, the air thick with the smell of coffee and damp canvas. Maya stood at a map table, her hands steady as she reviewed the op. "Solid work out there," she said, her eyes sweeping the team. "But we need tighter communication. Trust is everything." Her gaze landed on Elliot, and for a moment, he felt exposed, like she could see the storm inside him. He held her stare, refusing to flinch. If she knew about Noah, she didn't show it. But Elliot wasn't here to play games. He'd confront her, soon, but not in front of the unit. This was personal. After the debrief, the unit was dismissed for downtime. Soldiers scattered, some heading to the mess hall, others to their bunks. Elliot lingered, his mind churning. He needed answers not just from Noah, but from Maya. What was she to Noah? A fling? A rival? Something more. He found her at the edge of the camp, checking equipment in the armory. The space was quiet, save for the clink of metal and the hum of a distant generator. Maya didn't look up as he approached, but her posture shifted. Alert. "Something on your mind? Private?" she asked, her tone neutral. Elliot's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "Why him?" he asked. No preamble. "Why Noah?" Maya's hands paused, her eyes flicking to his. "You'll need to be more specific," she said, but there was a flicker of something guilt. Defiance. "Don't play dumb," Elliot said, stepping closer. "I saw him go into your quarters. I heard you too. You knew he was with me." Maya set down the rifle she was inspecting, her expression unreadable. "Elliot, I don't owe you an explanation," she said, her voice low but firm. "But since you're asking, I'll be straight. It was one night. He came to me, not the other way around. I didn't know about you two not until after. Her words hit like a punch, but Elliot didn't back down. You didn't know? Or you didn't care? He pressed. Because it sure didn't stop you. Maya's jaw tightened, but her eyes softened, just for a moment. I'm not the enemy here, she said. Noah made his choice. If you want to hate someone, hate him. But don't let this break you. You're better than that. Elliot wanted to argue, to unleash the rage burning in his chest, but her words disarmed him. She wasn't apologizing, but she wasn't gloating either. She was honest. It threw him off balance. He left the armory without another word, his mind a tangle of anger and doubt. Maya's honesty didn't erase the betrayal, but it shifted the weight. Noah had chosen this. Noah had broken them. And yet, Elliot couldn't shake the pull he still felt toward him, the ache of what they'd been. Back at the barracks, he found Noah waiting, leaning against his bunk. You talked to her, didn't you? Noah asked, his voice heavy. What did she say? That it was your choice, Elliot said, his tone flat. That you went to her. Noah's shoulders sagged. I did, he admitted. I was drunk. I was stupid. I don't know what I thought. But I know I want you. I always have. Elliot's chest tightened, torn between love and fury. Then why wasn't I enough? He asked, his voice breaking. He hated how vulnerable he sounded, but he couldn't stop. Why her? Noah stepped closer, his hands outstretched, but Elliot backed away. It wasn't about you not being enough, Noah said. It was about me being weak. I'm sorry, Elle. I'll do anything to make this right. Elliot wanted to believe him, wanted to fall back into the comfort of Noah's arms. But trust was a casualty of this war, and he wasn't ready to surrender. I need time, he said finally, turning away. Don't follow me. He left the barracks, the cold air biting his skin as he walked toward the training grounds. The next phase of the exercise was Laminga multi-day survival op in the mountains. It would test their endurance, their teamwork, their will. Elliot didn't know if he could work with Noah, let alone trust him. But he knew one thing, he'd survive this. Not just for the mission, but for himself. As night fell, the unit gathered for the final briefing. Maya outlined the op. They'd be dropped into the wilderness with minimal supplies, tasked with reaching a checkpoint 20 miles away. This isn't just about survival, she said, her voice steady. It's about who you are when the world strips you bare. Elliot met her eyes, then Noah's. The battlefield of love was unforgiving, but he was ready to fight. For his heart, for his pride, for the man he still wanted to be. The helicopter's roar swallowed Elliot's thoughts as it lifted off, leaving the unit in a clearing deep in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The survival op had begun, and the weight of it pressed against his chest 72 hours of navigating hostile terrain with Noah and Maya, the two people who'd turned his world upside down. He adjusted his pack, the straps digging into his shoulders, and steeled himself against the cold and the chaos in his heart. The team moved out, their boots sinking into the muddy earth. Maya led, her map and compass guiding them through dense forest. Noah stayed near the rear, his eyes darting to Elliot every few minutes. Elliot ignored him, focusing on the path ahead. The op demanded unity, but all he felt was fracture. Night one was brutal. Rain lashed the forest, turning the ground to sludge. They set up a makeshift camp under a rocky overhang, the team huddling for warmth. Elliot volunteered for first watch, needing space from Noah's pleading looks. He sat on a boulder, his rifle across his lap, the rain dripping from his hood. The forest was alive with sound owls, rustling leaves, the distant howl of a coyote, but all he could hear was Noah's voice. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. He didn't know how to forgive, not when the wound was still raw. But out here, survival trumped everything. He couldn't let his emotions compromise the mission or his team. At dawn, they broke camp, moving deeper into the mountains. The terrain grew steeper, the air thinner. Maya's leadership was flawless, her commands precise as she navigated them through a ravine. Elliot watched her, torn between resentment and respect. She was good, better than good. But that didn't erase what she'd done. Noah fell into step beside him as they climbed, his breath visible in the cold. You don't have to talk, Noah said, keeping his voice low. Just listen. I know I hurt you. I know I broke us. But I'm not giving up on you. Not now. Not ever. Elliot's jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the path. Words don't fix this, he said. You think you can just talk your way back into my heart. It doesn't work like that. I know, Noah said, his voice cracking. But I'll keep trying. I'll show you. Elliot didn't respond, his focus shifting to the mission. They were approaching a choke point, a narrow pass where the enemy could ambush them. Maya signaled for silence, her hand raised. The unit spread out, weapons ready. Elliot's senses sharpened, his training overriding his turmoil. He moved with purpose, scanning the cliffs above. The attack came fast, blanks popping, smoke, grenades bursting. Elliot dove behind a rock, returning fire with precision. Noah was at his side, their movements synchronized despite everything. They cleared the pass, but not without cost. 2 teammates were hit, marked out of the exercise. The unit was down to 8, and the pressure was mounting. At the next rest point, Maya pulled Elliot aside. You're off, she said, her tone direct. Your head's not in it. What's going on? Elliot bristled. I'm fine, he lied, avoiding her gaze. You're not, she said, stepping closer. I've seen you out there. You're one of the best. But something's eating you, and it's affecting the team. Talk to me. Her concern caught him off guard, but he wasn't ready to trust her. You want to know what's wrong? He said, his voice low. You slept with my fiancé. That's what's wrong. Maya's eyes widened, but she didn't flinch. I told you. I didn't know about you too, she said. And I'm not here to play homewrecker. I'm your captain, and I need you sharp. Can you do that? Elliot wanted to hate her, but her honesty disarmed him again. She wasn't the villain he'd wanted her to be. I'll do my job, he said finally, turning away. The second night was colder, the team bunking down in a cave. Elliot kept his distance, but Noah's presence was inescapable. They shared a fire, the flames casting shadows on the rock walls. Noah tried to bridge the gap, offering Elliot his canteen, but Elliot refused it. I don't need your help, he said, his voice cold. You don't have to need it, Noah said. I'm giving it anyway. The words lingered, heavy with meaning. Elliot stared into the fire, his heart torn. He wanted to believe Noah could change, but trust was a fragile thing, shattered by one night in Maya's quarters. Still, out here, survival meant relying on each other. He didn't have a choice. Day 3 brought new challenges, a river crossing, frigid and fast-moving. Elliot led the way, securing a rope for the team. Noah followed, slipping on the rocks but catching himself. Nice work, Noah said, his grin faint but genuine. Elliot didn't respond, but the compliment stung. It reminded him of the Noah he'd loved, the one who'd cheered him on during basic training, who'd held him through sleepless nights. That Noah was still there, buried under the betrayal, and it made Elliot's resolve waver. As they reached the checkpoint that evening, exhausted but intact, Maya called a halt. "We're halfway," she said, her voice steady. "Rest up. Tomorrow's harder." Her eyes met Elliot's, and for the first time, he saw something like respect there. It unsettled him, but it also sparked something Nawa determination to prove himself, not just to Noah or Maya, but to the soldier he'd always been. He didn't know if he could forgive Noah, or if Maya was an ally or a rival. But out here, in the crucible of the mountains, he was finding his strength. The battlefield of love was brutal, but Elliot was a fighter. And he wasn't done yet. The fourth day dawned gray, the sky heavy with the threat of snow. Elliot's breath hung in the air as he packed his gear, his body aching but his mind sharp. The survival op was pushing the unit to its limits, and he could feel the cracks in their cohesion cracks he'd widened with his anger. But today, he vowed to focus. The mission demanded it, and so did his pride. Maya led them through a dense forest, her map guiding them toward the final checkpoint. The terrain was unforgiving steep inclines, hidden ravines, and a biting wind that cut through their fatigues. Elliot stayed near the front, his eyes scanning for threats. Noah kept pace, silent but present, his every glance a plea for forgiveness. Elliot ignored it, channeling his energy into the task. The enemy struck at noon, a simulated assault that tested their reflexes. Blanks echoed through the trees, and Elliot moved with lethal precision, his training a shield against his emotions. He and Noah cleared a flank together, their movements fluid despite the tension between them. It was a cruel reminder of how good they'd been, how good they could have been. As the skirmish ended, Maya called a halt. "We're exposed here," she said, her voice tense. "We need to move fast." "Elliot, Noah, scout the ridge ahead." Her eyes lingered on Elliot, searching for something trust, maybe, or stability. He nodded, swallowing his resentment. He'd do his job, no matter the cost. The ridge was a jagged spine of rock, offering a clear view of the valley below. Elliot crouched, scanning the terrain through his binoculars. Noah knelt beside him, his shoulder brushing Elliot's. "You're still the best partner I've ever had," Noah said, his voice soft. "Out here, in life everything." Elliot's chest tightened, but he kept his eyes on the valley. "Don't," he said. "Not now." "I have to," Noah pressed. "I know I messed up, El. But I see you out here, fighting, leading. You're stronger than I ever was. And I'm terrified of losing you for good." Elliot lowered the binoculars, his jaw tight. "You already lost me," he said, but the words lacked the venom he'd intended. Noah's honesty was wearing him down, chipping away at the walls he'd built. He hated it, hated how much he still cared. Before Noah could respond, a crack split the air, not a blank, but a real sound. A rock slide, triggered by the wind or their movement, roared down the ridge. Elliot reacted instantly, shoving Noah out of the way as boulders tumbled past. They hit the ground hard, dust choking the air. When it cleared, Noah was staring at him, wide-eyed. "You saved me," he whispered. "Don't read into it," Elliot snapped, but his heart was racing. He'd acted on instinct, the same instinct that had once made him fall for Noah. It infuriated him, how deep that bond still ran. They rejoined the unit, shaken but unharmed. Maya's eyes narrowed as she assessed them. "You two okay?" she asked, her tone professional but laced with concern. "Fine," Elliot said, brushing dirt from his fatigues. He avoided Noah's gaze, focusing on Maya instead. She was steady, a rock in the storm, and he hated how much he respected her for it. She wasn't just Noah's mistake, she was a leader, and a damn good one. The unit pushed on, reaching a frozen stream by dusk. They set up camp, the cold seeping into their bones. Elliot volunteered for watch again, needing the solitude. He sat by the stream, the ice glinting under the moonlight. His thoughts drifted to the life he'd planned with Noah's small house, maybe in Colorado, with a porch where they could watch the sunset. That dream felt like a ghost now, haunting him with what could have been. Maya joined him, her boots crunching on the frost. "You're avoiding him," she said, sitting beside him. "But you're not avoiding the fight. That's something." Elliot glanced at her, surprised by the warmth in her voice. "Why do you care?" he asked. "You got what you wanted." Maya's laugh was short, bitter. "You think I wanted this?" "Noah showed up at my door, drunk and charming. I didn't know he was yours. And I don't do relationships, Elliot. I'm not built for it." She paused, her eyes on the stream. "But you are. And he's still yours, if you want him." Her words hit hard, stirring something in Elliot he wasn't ready to face. "I don't know what I want," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not anymore." Maya nodded, her expression softening. "You'll figure it out. You're tougher than you think." She stood, leaving him with the sound of the stream and the weight of her words. As the night deepened, Noah approached, his silhouette dark against the firelight. "I'm not giving up," he said, his voice steady. "I'll keep fighting for you, Elle. Even if you hate me." Elliot didn't respond, but he didn't push Noah away either. The battlefield was shifting, and he wasn't sure where he stood anymore. The mission was nearly over, but his war with Noah, with Maya, with himself was far from done. He'd face it, though, one step at a time, with the strength he was only beginning to reclaim. Snow dusted the forest floor as the unit broke camp on the 5th morning, the air sharp enough to cut. Elliot's breath clouded in front of him, his body weary but his resolve unbroken. The final checkpoint was close, but the terrain was a beast cliffs, dense underbrush, and a storm brewing on the horizon. He adjusted his pack, his eyes scanning the team. Noah was nearby, his face etched with determination, while Maya led with her usual precision. The tension between them was a live wire, sparking with every glance. The day's march was grueling, the snow thickening as they climbed. Maya's voice crackled through the comms, guiding them through a narrow pass. "Stay sharp," she warned. "We're in sniper territory." The exercise had escalated, with enemy snipers trainers with laser tags hiding in the cliffs. One hit, and you were out. Elliot took point, his senses honed. He moved silently, his rifle ready, Noah at his flank. Their teamwork was seamless, a muscle memory that refused to die. But every brush of Noah's arm, every shared glance, was a reminder of the trust they'd lost. Elliot pushed it down, focusing on the mission. He couldn't afford to falter. The first sniper struck without warning, a laser dot flashing on a teammate's chest. "Out!" The trainer called, and the unit tightened formation. Elliot's heart pounded as he scanned the cliffs, spotting a glint of movement. "There!" he hissed, signaling Noah. They dropped, crawling to cover behind a boulder. The laser missed them by inches. "Nice eyes," Noah said, his voice low but warm. Elliot ignored the compliment, but it lingered, a crack in his armor. They neutralized the sniper, moving as one, their past partnership a ghost that wouldn't fade. As they pressed on, the storm hit, snow swirling in blinding gusts. Visibility dropped to nothing, and Maya's commands grew urgent. Close ranks. We're sitting ducks out here. The unit huddled, their breath steaming in the cold. Elliot's fingers numbed around his rifle, but he kept moving, driven by a need to prove himself to Maya, to Noah, to the world. The second sniper attack came at dusk, the storm masking their approach. Laser dots danced across the snow, and chaos erupted. Elliot dove for cover, dragging Noah with him. They landed in a snowbank, their bodies pressed close, the heat of Noah's breath against Elliot's cheek a painful echo of better days. We're still good together, Noah whispered, his eyes searching Elliot's. Shut up, Elliot snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. He pulled away, focusing on the fight. They cleared the snipers, but the unit was down to 5 now, the losses piling up. Maya rallied them, her voice cutting through the storm. We're close, she said. One last push. Night fell, the storm unrelenting. They set up camp in a shallow cave, the wind howling outside. Elliot sat by the fire, his hands thawing, his mind racing. Noah sat across from him, his face illuminated by the flames. I know you're done with me, Noah said, his voice barely audible over the wind. But I need you to know I'm not done with you. I'll keep fighting. For us. Elliot's throat tightened, the words hitting harder than he expected. He wanted to lash out, to shut Noah down, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the storm, or the exhaustion, or the flicker of hope he couldn't quite extinguish. I don't know if I can trust you again, he said finally, his voice raw. But I'm trying to figure it out. Noah's eyes softened, a spark of hope igniting. That's enough for now, he said. I'll take it. Maya joined them, her presence grounding. You two need to sort this out, she said, her tone firm but not unkind. We're a team, and we can't afford cracks. Not out here. She paused, her eyes on Elliot. You're stronger than you know. Private. Don't let this define you. Her words echoed in Elliot's mind as he took watch that night, the storm raging outside. He thought of Maya's honesty, Noah's persistence, and his own resilience. He'd been betrayed. Yes, but he wasn't broken. The battlefield had taught him that much. By morning, the storm had eased, leaving a world of white. The unit moved out, the checkpoint only a few miles away. Elliot felt a shift inside him, a clarity born from the chaos. He didn't have all the answers, not about Noah, not about Maya, not about himself. But he knew one thing, he was a fighter, and he'd face whatever came next. As they neared the checkpoint, a final ambush hit, the trainers relentless. Elliot led the counterattack, his movements fierce, his heart steady. Noah fought beside him, and for the first time in days, Elliot didn't pull away. They were a team, if only for this moment, and it felt like a step toward something forgiveness. Maybe, or at least understanding. The unit reached the checkpoint at noon, battered but victorious. Maya's voice was proud as she radioed command. 47th Recon. Mission complete. Elliot stood tall, his eyes meeting Noah's, then Maya's. The war wasn't over, but he was ready for the next battle on the field and in his heart. The checkpoint was a cluster of tents and Humvees, a stark contrast to the wild mountains they'd conquered. Elliot's legs burned, his body screaming for rest, but his heart was alive with something new resolve, tempered by the fire of the past 5 days. The unit was debriefed, Maya's voice steady as she praised their resilience. Elliot felt her words, but his eyes were on Noah, who stood at the edge of the group, watching him with quiet intensity. They were given a day to recover before returning to Fort Harlan. Elliot found a quiet corner near the tents, the mountains looming in the distance. He needed space to think, to process the war inside him. Noah's betrayal still stung, but the op had shown him something else, his own strength, his ability to lead, to survive. He wasn't just a soldier, was a man fighting for his own heart. Noah approached, his steps hesitant. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. "No excuses. No bullshit. Just us." Elliot nodded, too tired to fight. They sat on a log, the cold seeping through their fatigues. Noah spoke first, his words raw. "I betrayed you, El. I can't undo that. But I've spent every day out here trying to show you I'm still the man you loved. I'm not perfect, but I'm yours if you'll have me." Elliot's chest ached, the weight of Noah's words pulling at him. He thought of the moments they'd share, the laughter, the promises, the quiet nights when Noah's arms felt like home. But he also thought of Maya, her honesty, her strength. She'd been a catalyst, but not the cause. Noah had made the choice, and Elliot had to decide what came next. "I loved you," Elliot said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "Maybe I still do. But love isn't enough without trust. And I don't know if I can give you that again." Noah's face fell, but he nodded. "I'll wait," he said. "As long as it takes." Elliot didn't respond, but the words lingered, a seed of possibility. He stood, needing to move, to feel the ground beneath him. He found Maya at the command tent, checking maps for the return trip. She looked up, her eyes meeting his with that same unreadable intensity. "You did good out there," she said. "Better than good. You held us together." Elliot shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did my job." "No," Maya said, stepping closer. "You fought for more than the mission. I see it. And I'm sorry for my part in this. I didn't mean to hurt you." Her apology caught him off guard, and for the first time, he saw her not as a rival, but as a person flawed, like him. "You didn't make Noah do it," he said. "He chose. But thanks for being straight with me." Maya nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "You're one of the good ones, Elliot. Don't forget it." Back at Fort Harlan, the unit settled into routine, but nothing felt the same. Elliot moved through drills, meals, and downtime with a new clarity. He wasn't the man he'd been a week ago, broken by betrayal. He was stronger, forged in the crucible of the mountains, tempered by pain and purpose. Weeks passed, and Noah kept his promise, showing up in small ways, bringing Elliot coffee, leaving notes on his bunk, giving him space but never disappearing. Elliot watched, wary but softening. Maya, too, became a steady presence, her leadership a reminder that strength didn't mean perfection. She didn't pursue Noah, and Elliot respected her for it. One evening, under a sky streaked with stars, Elliot found Noah at their old spot behind the mess hall. "I'm not ready to forgive you," Elliot said, his voice calm but firm. "But I'm not ready to let you go either." Noah's eyes lit up, hope flickering. "That's more than I deserve," he said. "I'll take it." Elliot nodded, a weight lifting. The battlefield of love had scarred him, but it hadn't broken him. He'd taken Noah and Maya down not with anger, but with truth, with resilience, with the courage to face his own heart. He didn't know if he and Noah would rebuild what they'd had, but he knew he'd survive, stronger for it. As the stars burned above, Elliot felt a quiet peace. He was a soldier, a lover, a man who'd fought and won not just on the field, but in the war for himself. and that was a victory worth celebrating. The airport lounge smelled of overpriced coffee and fleeting goodbyes, a place where lives collided before scattering to opposite corners of the world. Marcus Tate stood frozen, his boarding pass crumpled in his fist, as a stranger's green eyes pinned him from across the room. In that single glance, his carefully planned life began to unravel. Marcus, a 28-year-old journalist from Chicago, had always lived by lists, deadlines, goals, itineraries. His leather journal, tucked under his arm, held every detail of his life: his upcoming assignment in London, his sister's wedding next month, even the exact time he'd call his mother to check in. Control was his anchor, his shield against a world that often felt too big, too unpredictable. But as he stood in the crowded lounge at O'Hare International Airport, waiting for his flight to Heathrow, something shifted. The man leaning against the bar, with a faded denim jacket and a gaze that cut through the noise, wasn't on any of Marcus's lists. His name, Marcus would later learn, was Javier Morales, a 32-year-old carpenter from New Mexico, passing through Chicago on his way to visit family in Miami. Javier's life was the opposite of Marcus' unscripted, raw, lived in the moment. His hands were calloused from years of shaping wood, his green eyes carrying stories he rarely told. He'd noticed Marcus the moment he walked in, not because of his polished blazer or the way he fidgeted with his pen, but because of the quiet intensity in his brown eyes, like a man searching for something he didn't yet know he'd lost. Their eyes met again, and Javier smelled a small, crooked thing that felt like a secret meant only for Marcus. The lounge faded, the clink of glasses, the hum of conversations, the robotic voice announcing gate changes. Marcus's heart thudded, a rhythm he didn't recognize. He wasn't supposed to feel this, not here. Not now. Not for a stranger whose name he didn't even know. Flight 247 to London, now boarding at gate C19. The speaker crackled. Marcus flinched, his body urging him toward the gate, but his feet stayed rooted. Javier hadn't moved either. He tilted his head slightly, as if daring Marcus to take a step closer. And against every instinct, every checklist in his journal, Marcus did. "Mind if I join you?" Marcus asked, his voice steadier than he felt. He slid onto the bar stool next to Javier, the leather creaking under his weight. Up close, Javier smelled faintly of cedar and something earthier, like desert rain. His eyes, those piercing green eyes, held a question Marcus wasn't sure he could answer. "Didn't peg you for a lounge guy," Javier said, his voice low, teasing. "You look like you've got a plan for the next 10 years. Marcus laughed, a nervous sound that surprised him. "I do. London by morning. Article filed by Friday. Back home by next week." "And yet," Javier said, leaning closer, "you're here talking to me instead of boarding." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He wasn't used to being seen like this, not by anyone, let alone a man who seemed to read him like an open book. His life in Chicago was orderly, predictable. He'd dated, sure, but always carefully men who fit into his schedule, who didn't ask too much or make his heart race like this. He was out, but quietly so, his identity a footnote in a life focused on work and family. Yet here, in this fleeting airport lounge, Javier's presence felt like a spotlight. They talked, at first about nothing: flights, weather, the overpriced whiskey on the menu. But soon, the conversation deepened. Javier spoke of his childhood in Taos, of building furniture with his father, of the quiet pride he took in creating something lasting. Marcus shared stories of late nights chasing deadlines, of growing up in a tight-knit family where love was loud but expectations were louder. They laughed over shared quirks like their mutual hatred of airport food and fell silent when their hands brushed reaching for the same napkin. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time blurred in the lounge's amber glow. Marcus's flight came and went, the gate announcement fading into the background. He didn't care. For the first time in years, he wasn't checking his watch or his journal. He was here, fully here, with a man whose eyes made him feel like he was falling and flying at once. "You missed your flight," Javier said softly, not accusing, just stating a fact. "Yeah," Marcus replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think I did." Javier's hand rested on the bar, inches from Marcus's. Neither moved to close the gap, but the air between them hummed with possibility. Marcus's phone buzzed, probably his editor, wondering why he wasn't on the plane. He ignored it. The world outside the lounge could wait. The lounge grew quieter as the night deepened, travelers thinning out, leaving only the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional clatter of a bartender wiping down glasses. Marcus and Javier stayed, their conversation a lifeline in the transient space. Marcus felt the weight of his missed flight settling in, not regret, but a strange, exhilarating freedom. Javier leaned back, his denim jacket slipping slightly off one shoulder. "So, what's in London that's worth crossing an ocean for?" he asked, his tone curious but laced with something heavier, like he was testing the waters. Marcus hesitated. The assignment was a profile on a rising British politician, a story that could cement his career. But saying it out loud felt hollow now, like a script he'd memorized but no longer believed. "Work," he said finally. "A story. The kind that could change things for me." Javier nodded, but his eyes didn't leave Marcus's. "And is that what you want? To change things?" The question hit harder than Marcus expected. He'd spent years chasing bylines, building a name in a cutthroat industry. But Javier's gaze stripped away the ambition, leaving only the man beneath, someone who hadn't stopped to ask himself what he truly wanted in a long time. "I thought I did," Marcus admitted. "Now, I'm not so sure." Javier's smile returned, softer this time. "Your trouble, Marcus Tate. I can tell." "Me?" Marcus laughed, the sound easing the tension in his chest. "You're the one making me miss international flights." They ordered another round of drinks, bourbon for Javier, gin for Marcus, and the conversation shifted to lighter ground. Javier told stories of his life in Taos, of late nights carving wood under starlit skies, of the time he built a rocking chair for his grandmother that she still used every day. Marcus spoke of Chicago's chaos, of jazz clubs he loved but rarely visited, of his sister's relentless teasing about his overplanned life. Each story felt like a gift, a piece of themselves offered freely. But beneath the laughter, a current of tension ran. Marcus noticed the way Javier's fingers lingered on his glass, the way his eyes flicked to Marcus's lips when he thought he wasn't looking. Marcus's own pulse betrayed him, quickening every time Javier leaned closer. He wasn't naive, he knew attraction when he felt it, but this was different. It wasn't just physical. It was the way Javier listened, really listened, like Marcus's words mattered more than the flight he'd missed. The lounge's clock read 11:47 p.m. Javier's flight to Miami was in an hour. Marcus's stomach twisted at the thought. "When's your flight?" he asked, dreading the answer. "Midnight," Javier said, his voice quieter now. "But I'm not in a rush." Marcus swallowed, his throat tight. "You should be. Family's waiting for you." Javier's eyes darkened, a flicker of something raw passing through them. "Family's complicated," he said. "My dad, he doesn't know about me. Not the real me." Marcus understood instantly. He'd come out to his family years ago, And while they'd embraced him, he knew the weight of hiding. "That's heavy," he said softly. "You ever think about telling him?" Javier shrugged, but the gesture was heavy. "Every day? But it's not just about me. It's cultural stuff. You know. Expectations. Machismo. All that." Marcus nodded, his hand inching closer to Javier's on the bar. "I get it. My family's loud and loving, but they still want me to be the perfect son. Check all the boxes. Sometimes I feel like I'm performing for them." Javier's fingers brushed Marcus's, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through him. "Maybe we're both performing," Javier said, his voice barely audible. "Maybe that's why we're still here." The bartender announced last call, shattering the moment. Marcus's heart raced. He didn't want this to end, not the conversation, not the feeling, not the possibility of whatever this was. But Javier's flight was looming, and reality was creeping back in. "Walk with me to my gate," Javier asked, his eyes holding Marcus's with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. They stood, leaving their half-finished drinks behind, and stepped out into the brightly lit terminal. The airport felt surreal now, a liminal space where time didn't exist, where two strangers could become something more in the span of a few hours. As they walked, their shoulders brushed, and neither pulled away. Marcus's journal felt heavier in his hand, its pages full of plans that no longer seemed to matter. Javier's silence was heavy too, like he was wrestling with something he couldn't yet say. At gate B12, the boarding announcement for Miami echoed through the terminal. Javier stopped, turning to face Marcus. "This is me," he said, but he didn't move toward the gate. Marcus's chest ached. "You should go," he said, the words tasting like ash. Javier stepped closer, so close Marcus could feel the warmth of his breath. "What if I don't want to?" The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but all Marcus could see was Javier's face, inches from his own. The boarding announcement repeated, a robotic voice urging passengers to move. But Javier stood still, his green eyes searching Marcus's for something neither could name. In that moment, the world shrank to the space between them, electric and fragile. Marcus's mind screamed at him to step back, to let Javier go, to return to the life he'd planned. But his body betrayed him, leaning closer, drawn to the heat of Javier's presence. "You'll miss your flight," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. Javier's lips curved into that crooked smile, but his eyes were serious. "Maybe I'm not supposed to be on it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Marcus's heart pounded so loudly he was sure Javier could hear it. He'd never been reckless, never thrown away a plan for a feeling. But Javier wasn't just a feeling, was a question, a challenge, a possibility Marcus hadn't written into his journal. Before he could overthink it, Marcus grabbed Javier's hand, pulling him away from the gate. "Come with me," he said, his voice urgent. "Just for a little longer." Javier didn't resist. They moved through the terminal, past sleepy travelers and glowing signs, until they found a quiet corner near a closed coffee shop. The space was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a vending machine. They sat on a bench, knees touching, the weight of their decision settling around them. "Why'd you do that?" Javier asked, his voice soft but curious. "You don't even know me." Marcus laughed, a shaky sound. "I don't know. I couldn't let you go. Not yet." Javier's hand was still in his, warm and solid. "You're going to get me in trouble, Marcus Tate," he said, but there was no regret in his tone. They talked, their voices low, as if afraid to break the spell. Javier shared more about his life, how he'd left house to escape the weight of his father's expectations, how he'd come out to a few close friends, but never to his family. "It's not that they'd hate me," he said, staring at the floor. "It's that they'd look at me different. Like I'm not the son they raised." Marcus squeezed his hand. "I told my mom when I was 20. Thought she'd be finesse, all about love and acceptance. But she cried. Not because she didn't love me, but because she was scared for me. Scared of the world I'd face." Javier nodded, his thumb tracing circles on Marcus's hand. "You ever feel like you're carrying that fear for them? Like you've got to prove you're okay? Every day?" "All the time," Marcus said. "That's why I plan everything. If I control the outcome, no one has to worry." Javier's eyes softened. "And yet, here you are, missing flights with a guy you met 3 hours ago." Marcus laughed, the sound lighter now. "Yeah. Guess you're my first bad decision." "Nah," Javier said, leaning closer. "I'm your best one." The air shifted, charged with something neither could ignore. Javier's hand moved to Marcus's cheek, his touch gentle but sure. Marcus's breath caught, his body frozen between fear and want. He'd kissed men before, but this felt different, like crossing a threshold he couldn't uncross. Javier didn't push, didn't rush. He waited, his eyes asking permission. Marcus leaned in, closing the gap, and their lips met in a kiss that was soft at first, then urgent, like they were making up for lost time. The terminal faded, the world reduced to the warmth of Javier's mouth, the roughness of his stubble, the way his hand slid to the back of Marcus's neck. When they pulled apart, both were breathless, their foreheads resting together. "What are we doing?" Marcus whispered, half laughing, half terrified. "I don't know," Javier admitted, his voice raw. "But I don't want to stop." They stayed like that, tangled in each other, until the terminal's lights dimmed further, signaling the late hour. Marcus's phone buzzed again, his editor, probably furious. He silenced it. Javier's flight was long gone, and neither mentioned it. They were in this now, whatever it was, and the thought was both thrilling and terrifying. "Let's get out of here," Javier said suddenly, standing and pulling Marcus to his feet. "This airport's too cold for what's happening between us." Marcus hesitated, his journal heavy in his hand. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere," Javier said, his eyes bright with possibility. "Chicago's your city, right? Show me." Marcus's mind raced. He had a hotel booked near the airport, a practical choice for his layover. Taking Javier there felt reckless, but the alternative, letting him walk away, was unthinkable. "Okay," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest. "Let's go." They grabbed their bags and headed for the exit, the terminal's chaos fading behind them. Outside, the Chicago night was crisp, the city skyline glittering in the distance. Marcus stole a glance at Javier, whose green eyes caught the streetlights, and felt a surge of something he couldn't name: hope, maybe, or something even bigger. The Chicago night wrapped around Marcus and Javier like a secret, the city's pulse matching their own as they stepped out of the taxi. The hotel was modest but sleek, its lobby glowing with warm light. Marcus's heart hadn't stopped racing since the kiss, and every glance at Javier, his easy stride, the way his denim jacket hung loose, made it worse. They checked in, Marcus fumbling with his credit card under the clerk's bored gaze. The elevator ride to the 5th floor was silent, but their hands brushed, a quiet promise. In the room, Marcus dropped his bag and turned to Javier, who was already watching him, eyes dark with intent. "You sure about this?" Javier asked, his voice low, careful. You don't owe me anything. Marcus. We can just talk. Marcus swallowed, his throat tight. He wasn't sure not of Javier, not of himself, not of what this night might mean. But he knew he didn't want to be anywhere else. I'm sure, he said, stepping closer. I want this. I want you. Javier's smile was soft, almost shy, but his hands were steady as they found Marcus's waist. They kissed again, slower this time, savoring the moment. The room felt too small for the enormity of what was happening, but it was enough. They moved to the bed, clothes falling away, their bodies learning each other in the dim light. It wasn't just desire, it was trust, vulnerability, a connection neither had expected to find in an airport lounge. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, the city's hum filtering through the window. Javier's fingers traced patterns on Marcus's back, and Marcus felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Tell me something real, Javier whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Marcus turned to face him, their noses almost touching. I'm scared, he admitted. Not of this, but of what happens next. I don't know how to do thesis without a plan. Javier's hand stilled. I'm scared too, he said. I've spent my life running from things' expectations, my family's rules, myself. But I'm not running from you. The words settled in Marcus's chest, heavy and warm. They talked until the early hours, sharing pieces of their lives they'd kept hidden. Javier spoke of his father's disapproval, not of his sexuality, but of his choice to leave Taos, to live a life that didn't fit the family mold. Marcus confessed his fear of failing not just at work, but at being enough for the people he loved. As dawn crept through the curtains, Marcus's phone buzzed again. He glanced at Ida's string of missed calls from his editor, texts demanding answers. He sighed, sitting up. I have to deal with this, he said, dread pooling in his stomach. Javier propped himself on one elbow, his expression unreadable. Your life's calling you back. Huh? Marcus nodded, guilt gnawing at him. I can't just disappear. My editor's probably ready to fire me. Javier sat up, his hand resting on Marcus's knee. Then don't disappear. But don't let go of this either. We're not done. You and me. Marcus looked at him, those green eyes steady and sure. What are we? Javier. We met. What? 10 hours ago. And I'm already rearranging my life for you. Javier laughed, the sound warm and grounding. Maybe that's how it works sometimes. You meet someone, and everything changes. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Marcus wanted to believe him, but doubt crept in. His life was in Chicago, his career on the line. Javier's life was in Taos, or Miami, or wherever his next job took him. How could this work? Yet the thought of walking away made his chest ache. Let's get breakfast, Javier said, breaking the tension. No plans, no pressure. Just us. Marcus agreed, and they dressed, stealing glances like teenagers. The hotel's diner was quiet, the smell of coffee and bacon filling the air. They sat across from each other, knees touching under the table, and ordered pancakes. It felt normal, almost too normal, like they'd been doing this for years. But as they ate, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, he answered. His editor's voice was sharp, demanding to know why he'd missed the flight. Marcus explained, keeping it vague a personal emergency. He'd reschedule. The call ended with a warning, don't screw this up. Javier watched him, his expression careful. You okay? Marcus nodded, but his mind was spinning. I don't know how to balance this. You. My job. Everything. Javier reached across the table, his hand covering Marcus's. One step at a time. Yeah. We'll figure it out. The words were simple, but they grounded Marcus. He squeezed Javier's hand. A silent promise. They weren't done, not by a long shot. The Chicago morning was gray. The diner's windows streaked with rain as Marcus and Javier lingered over their coffee. The pancakes were gone, but neither wanted to leave the booth. Their knees still touching, their hands brushing every so often. Marcus felt like he was living in a dream, one he didn't want to wake from. So, what now? Javier asked, his voice gentle but pointed. You've got a life to get back to. I've got a family waiting in Miami. Marcus stared at his coffee, the dark liquid reflecting his uncertainty. I don't know, he admitted. I've never done this, thrown everything off course for someone. Javier's smile was soft, almost sad. Me neither. But I don't regret it. Not 1 second. The words warmed Marcus, but they didn't erase the questions. His editor had given him a chance to salvage the London assignment, reschedule the flight. Be there by tomorrow night. But every time he thought of leaving, Javier's eyes pulled him back. He'd never believed in love at first sight. But this wasn't just attraction. It was a connection that felt like it had always been there, waiting to be found. Let's spend the day together, Marcus said suddenly, surprising himself. Chicago's my city. Let me show you something real. Javier's eyes lit up. Lead the way. They left the diner, stepping into the drizzle. Marcus took Javier to his favorite spots, a jazz club in Wicker Park, closed now but alive with memories he shared. A bookstore where he'd spent countless hours as a kid. A park where the city's skyline loomed like a promise. They walked hand in hand, unbothered by the rain or the occasional glance from passers-by. Marcus felt free in a way he hadn't in years, like he was seeing his city and himself through new eyes. At a food truck, they grabbed tacos and sat on a bench, the city buzzing around them. Javier laughed as sauce dripped down his chin, and Marcus wiped it away, their fingers lingering. Your trouble, Javier Morales, Marcus said, echoing Javier's earlier words. Takes one to know one, Javier shot back, his grin infectious. But as the day wore on, reality crept in. Javier's phone buzzed with texts from his sister, asking when he'd arrive in Miami. Marcus's editor sent a confirmation for a new flight tomorrow morning. The weight of their separate lives pressed down, threatening to pull them apart. That evening, they ended up at Marcus's apartment, a small but cozy place filled with books and framed photos of his family. Javier wandered the space, studying the pictures, the stacks of journals, the life Marcus had built. This is you, he said, picking up a photo of Marcus with his sister, both laughing at some forgotten joke. All of it. Marcus stood beside him, their shoulders brushing. Yeah. And I want you to be part of it. Javier turned, his eyes searching Marcus's. You mean that? I do, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. I don't know how, but I want to try. Javier pulled him close, their kiss deep and certain. They fell into each other again, the apartment a cocoon against the world outside. But as they lay in bed later, the rain tapping against the window, Marcus couldn't shake the question, how could this last? I need to tell you something, Javier said, his voice quiet in the dark. My family, they're not just waiting for me in Miami. My dad's sick. Cancer. I'm going to help take care of him. Marcus's heart sank. I'm so sorry, he said, reaching for Javier's hand. Is he? He's fighting, Javier said, his voice thick. But it's why I can't just stay here, no matter how much I want to. Marcus nodded, understanding but hating it. And I've got this assignment. If I blow it, my career's in trouble. They lay in silence. The weight of their choices heavy between them. But neither pulled away. Instead, they held each other tighter, as if they could keep the world at bay. Let's make a deal, Javier said finally. You go to London. I go to Miami. But we don't let this go. We call. We text. We make it work. Marcus wanted to believe it was possible, but doubt gnawed at him. Long distance was hard, and they'd only just met. Yet the thought of losing Javier was worse. Deal, he said, sealing it with a kiss. As they drifted to sleep, Marcus's mind raced with possibilities. For the first time, he didn't reach for his journal to plan the next step. He didn't need to. Javier was his plan now, even if he didn't know what that meant. Morning light filtered through Marcus's curtains, casting soft shadows across the room. He woke to find Javier already up, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window. The sight of him hair mussed. Denim jacket draped over a chair felt like a snapshot Marcus wanted to keep forever. You're up early, Marcus said, his voice rough with sleep. Javier turned, his smile tinged with sadness. Couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about you. About this. Marcus sat up, his heart tightening. What about it? Javier moved closer, his hand finding Marcus's. I don't want to leave. But I have to. My dad, he needs me. Marcus nodded, the reality of their situation sinking in. And I have to go to London. But we said we'd make it work. Right. Right, Javier said, but his eyes were uncertain. I've never felt this before. Not this fast. Not this strong. Marcus's chest ached. He pulled Javier into a kiss, slow and deep, pouring everything he couldn't say into it. They dressed in silence, the weight of their impending separation heavy. Marcus's flight was in a few hours, Javier's soon after. They'd agreed to try long distance, but the logistics felt daunting. At the airport, the same place where they'd met, everything felt different. The lounge was quieter now, the morning crowd subdued. They sat at the same bar, but the magic of their first night was tempered by the reality of goodbye. I'm not good at this, Javier admitted, his voice low. Saying goodbye. Letting people in. Marcus reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. You're doing fine. And this isn't goodbye. It's, see you later. Javier laughed, the sound breaking the tension. You're such a journalist. Always finding the right words. They lingered until the last possible moment, boarding calls pulling them apart. At Javier's gate, they kissed again, a desperate, clinging thing that left Marcus breathless. Call me when you land, he said, his voice thick. You too, Javier replied, his green eyes bright with emotion. Don't forget me, Marcus Tate. Never, Marcus promised. They parted, Javier disappearing into the crowd, Marcus heading to his own gate. The flight to London was long, the hours stretching endlessly. Marcus tried to work on his article, but his thoughts kept drifting to Javier's laugh, his touch, the way his eyes seemed to see straight through him. In London, Marcus threw himself into work, interviewing the politician, chasing leads, filing his story. But every night, he called Javier. They talked for hours, sharing stories, laughing, sometimes just listening to each other breathe. Javier sent photos of Miami, his family's small house, the ocean, his father's tired but stubborn smile. Marcus sent snapshots of London rainy streets, cozy pubs, the notebook where he'd started writing about Javier. The distance was hard, but it forced them to be honest. Javier opened up about his father's illness, the guilt of hiding who he was. Marcus admitted his fear of failing, of not being enough. Their calls became a lifeline, a reminder that what they'd found was real. Weeks passed, and Marcus returned to Chicago. Javier's father took a turn for the worse, and their calls grew shorter, strained by hospital visits and exhaustion. Marcus felt helpless, thousands of miles away, unable to do more than listen. One night, Javier's voice broke over the phone. "I told him," he said, the words heavy with emotion. "About me. About you." Marcus's heart stopped. What did he say? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "He just wants me to be happy. I think he's trying." Marcus closed his eyes, relief flooding him. "That's huge. Javier. I'm proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," Javier said. "You make me want to be brave." They talked until dawn, the distance between them shrinking with every word. Marcus knew it wouldn't be easy his career, Javier's family, the miles between them. But for the first time, he believed they could make it work. Months later, Marcus stood in O'Hare's terminal again, his heart racing as it had that first night. This time, he wasn't catching a flight. He was waiting for one to arrive. Javier's name glowed on the arrivals board, and Marcus clutched a small bouquet of sunflowers, Javier's favorite. He'd learned during one of their late-night calls. Their relationship had grown through texts, calls, and stolen weekends when Javier could leave Miami. They'd faced challenges: Marcus's demanding job, Javier's father's fragile health, the strain of distance. But they'd also found joy, Javier teaching Marcus to carve wood over video calls, Marcus surprising Javier with a care package of Chicago-style popcorn. Every moment, big or small, felt like a victory. When Javier appeared, his denim jacket familiar but his smile brighter, Marcus's breath caught. They ran to each other, colliding in a hug that felt like coming home. "You're here," Marcus whispered, his voice thick. "I'm here," Javier said, his green eyes shining. "And I'm not going anywhere." They'd made plans. Javier would stay in Chicago for a month, test the waters. His father was stable, his family slowly coming to terms with who he was. Marcus had pitched a new story to his editor, one he could write from Chicago, giving them time to build something real. That night, they returned to Marcus's apartment, the city glittering outside. They cooked dinner together, laughing as they fumbled with a recipe neither knew well. Later, they sat on the couch, Javier's head resting on Marcus's shoulder, the sunflowers in a vase nearby. "I used to think love was supposed to be easy," Marcus said, his fingers tracing Javier's. "But out's worth the work." Javier looked up, his eyes soft but fierce. "You're worth it, Marcus. All of it." They kissed, the moment quiet but profound. Marcus thought of his journal, still tucked in his bag, its pages now filled with sketches of their future trips they'd take, dreams they'd chase, a life they'd build together. It wasn't a plan, not in the way he used to make them. It was better a promise, messy and real. The airport lounge had been a beginning, a chance encounter that changed everything. But this, here, now this was their story. And as Marcus held Javier close, he knew they'd write it together. One day, one kiss, one green-eyed glance at a time.